Here's something strange. Humans are the only animals on Earth that genuinely struggle to give birth. A gazelle drops a calf, and it's running within the hour. A cat does it alone in a closet. But the two things that made us human, walking upright and growing huge brains, turned childbirth into the most dangerous thing our species does. So how did our ancestors survive being born at all? Let's start with the problem, because it's a strange one. To understand it, you have to look at two upgrades evolution handed us, and how badly they fought each other. The first was walking upright. Around 4 million years ago, our ancestors stood up and started moving on two legs. To make that work, the pelvis had to change shape. A wide, flaring ape pelvis is terrible for walking, so ours narrowed and curved into a tight bowl that could hold our organs in and swing our legs efficiently. Great for walking, bad for one specific thing. The second upgrade was the brain. Over the next few million years, the human brain ballooned to roughly 3 times the size of a chimpanzee's. Bigger brain, bigger skull. And now you can see the collision coming. We were building babies with larger and larger heads and trying to push them through a pelvis that was getting narrower and narrower. Anthropologists have a name for this trap. They call it the obstetrical dilemma, and it's an old problem. The famous fossil skeleton we call Lucy, an early upright ancestor who lived more than 3 million years ago, already had a pelvis caught between walking and birthing. So the squeeze is almost as old as walking itself. It's worth being honest that scientists still argue over the details. Some, like the anthropologist Holly Dunsworth, think birth happens when it does less because the pelvis is maxed out, and more because the mother hits the limit of how much energy she can pour into a growing baby. The exact trigger is debated. The result isn't. Human birth is hard in a way almost nothing else's is. Here's how tight the squeeze actually is. In most monkeys, the baby's head is comfortably smaller than the mother's birth canal. There's room to spare, and birth is quick. In a human, the baby's head is almost exactly the same size as the opening it has to pass through. Almost exactly. There is no room to spare. It is one of the tightest fits in the entire animal kingdom. And it is the reason a process that takes a cat 20 minutes can take a human 20 hours. But it gets worse because the human birth canal isn't a simple tube. It's a twisting passage that changes shape as it goes. At the top, it's widest from side to side. At the bottom, it's widest front to back. So the baby can't just drop straight through. It has to turn, rotating partway down to fit the next part of the passage, like working a couch through a narrow doorway. And at the end of that turn, the human baby comes out facing backward, away from the mother. That tiny detail matters far more than it sounds. When a monkey gives birth, the baby emerges facing up toward her, so she can reach down, guide it, and wipe its face herself. A human mother can't safely do that. Reaching down to a baby facing away from you risks bending its head the wrong way. Two anthropologists, Karen Rosenberg and Wenda Trevathan, pointed out what this means. Human birth, almost uniquely in the animal world, is safer with help. Someone else needs to be there. And that one fact changes everything. There's one more piece. Even with all of that, the squeeze is so tight that evolution had to cheat. Human babies are born unfinished. A foal can stand and run within hours. A human baby can't hold up its own head for months, can't walk for a year, can't survive alone for years. Our babies are effectively pushed out early before their brains finish growing, because if we waited any longer, the head would simply never fit. We trade a few months of safety inside for a baby that fits through the door. Some people call those first months the 4th trimester, a pregnancy that finishes on the outside in someone's arms, instead of inside the body, which means the work doesn't end at birth. It barely begins. So put yourself back 100,000 years. No hospital, no surgeon, no painkiller, just a tight squeeze, a backward-facing baby, and a process that kills if it goes wrong. How did our ancestors not only survive this, but do it generation after generation for hundreds of thousands of years? They had a toolkit, and almost all of it came down to one thing: each other. The first tool was help. Remember that backward-facing baby? Because a mother couldn't safely guide her own child out, other people learned to do it for her. Across nearly every culture ever studied, from the deep past to today, women give birth with someone else present. A mother, a sister, an experienced older woman. Rosenberg and Trevathan argue this makes assisted birth one of the oldest human behaviors there is. Older than farming, older than writing, maybe older than language as we'd recognize it. The helper could turn a baby, clear its airway, catch it, steady the mother. A second pair of hands turned a death sentence into something a person could survive. And those hands carried knowledge. An experienced older woman had seen dozens of births. She knew which positions worked, what a complication looked like, what to try when a baby came the wrong way. None of it was written down. It lived in memory and got handed to the next generation the way everything important did, by watching, by doing, by being taught. Every birth that went well added to a library of know-how no single person could hold alone. The second tool was the body itself. Used wisely, here's something that sounds backwards. For almost all of human history, women did not give birth lying flat on their backs. They squatted, knelt, or crouched, usually holding on to something or someone. And that isn't random. When you squat, the bones of the pelvis actually shift and open. Modern imaging shows the outlet can widen by as much as a third compared to lying down. Gravity helps too. Lying flat on a bed is a surprisingly recent idea, and for the birth itself, not always a better one. Our ancestors found the better position thousands of years before anyone could measure why it worked. But the deepest tool was the group. A human baby is the most expensive thing a body can make, helpless for years, demanding constant food and care while that giant brain finishes growing. No single mother in a hard world could carry that cost alone, so she didn't. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy has spent her career on this idea. Humans are cooperative breeders. We raise children together, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, older siblings, fathers. The whole group pitches in to feed and watch and carry the young. Hrdy argues this is one of the things that made us human in the first place, that our patience, our empathy, our knack for reading each other grew partly out of the sheer need to raise these impossible babies as a team. We didn't just survive birth together, we survived everything that came after it together. There's a strange clue baked into the human lifespan that backs this up. In almost every other animal, females breed until they die. Humans are one of the rare exceptions. Women can live for decades after they stop having children of their own, and for a long time that made no evolutionary sense. The leading explanation is called the grandmother hypothesis. A grandmother who survives doesn't make more babies, but she helps her daughters raise theirs, gathering food, watching the young, passing on what she knows. Those extra hands meant more grandchildren lived. In other words, we may have evolved unusually long lives precisely because raising a human child takes more than two parents. We are built, right down to our lifespan, to do this together. None of this made it safe. For most of human history, birth was one of the most dangerous days in a person's life, for mother and child both. Many didn't make it, and that loss shaped us in the coldest way evolution works. It quietly selected, generation after generation, for the bodies and the cooperation that could get through. Every person alive today is descended from an unbroken line of births that worked. Not one of your ancestors, going back millions of years, died before passing life on. That isn't luck. It's the most successful relay race in history. And then, almost overnight on this timeline, we changed the rules. For nearly all of human history, the obstetrical dilemma had one answer: help, knowledge, and luck. Then, in just the last century or so, came clean hands, antibiotics, blood transfusions, and surgery. The cesarean section did something no amount of ancient wisdom ever could. It opened a second door straight past the tight squeeze entirely. In a few generations, a process that had killed mothers and babies for hundreds of thousands of years became, in much of the world, one of the safest things a hospital does. We didn't widen the birth canal. We invented a way around it. Which brings it back to you. You are here, which means something quietly staggering is true. Every single one of your ancestors, every one in an unbroken chain stretching back millions of years, survived the single most dangerous thing the human body does. And almost none of them did it alone. There were always other hands. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person I make these for. Subscribe, and we'll go find the next strange thing together. The same two gifts that nearly made birth impossible, standing up and growing a mind, are the reason we became a species that has to help each other just to exist. We weren't built to be born easily. We were built to be born together.